Hey guys, so I just hit the 8K mark on the current season, and wanted to use this as a chance to kind of do a meta analysis as well as a chance to look at the current comeback mechanics and different tribes that you should be looking at playing. This isn't going to be a full comp guides or like how to play each of the different comps or even like a tier list, even though I will go into some of the different tiering. However, it's more just a look at the metagame and how you should be thinking about every single lobby that you go into. I very much have this algorithmic way of thinking where every time I play the game, I want to kind of have the same mindset and then go from there. The game in the background will be the game that I ended up using to get to 8K. I don't think it ends up being a first place, but I think what's really important is seeing that it's not using one of what I call the S tier comps. It's using a kind of B tier, if you want to even call it that, Beatles game. So, don't get too focused on that play, but more let's just look at the actual meta. So I think the biggest thing to kind of talk about when we're evaluating the current meta is first the concept of what tempo is and what comeback mechanics are. Comeback mechanics in Battlegrounds are generally ways for you to earn value over your opponents for cheap. Generally, this is done with scam units and generating value through things like brand. Something you may have noticed in the current season is there are next to no viable scam units outside of the Murlocs, and Murlocs have been gutted because of the apprentice being removed from the minion pool. Additionally, there's just a lot less value generators in general, so it makes picking up a brand a lot harder. You're generally going to get less payback. Some of that's from like Neon Agent being removed from the pool, and some of that is just the current minions. There's not a lot of battle cry, and it seems that Blizzard's kind of moved the meta over to end of turn effects. So there's comeback mechanics. Is once you're like behind, it's a lot harder for you to come back in this game and stabilize that way. So the second concept is tempo. Tempo is kind of where you are with respect to the rest of the lobby. I think this is easiest shown with like an example. So assuming you're doing a normal curve through turn 3, on turn 3 you have 5 gold and you kind of have this option of you can sell your unit and buy 2 tier 2 minions. Let's just assume like you have a strike oil or something like that in the shop. So you can either sell your 1 tier 1 minion, get 2 tier 2 minions, or you can sell and level it to tavern tier 3. Obviously in this case you would be behind in tempo on turn 3 if you did the second option, because the first option gives you 2 tier 2 minions, you have nothing on your board. But then let's look at on like turn 4. Well, you get each of those options, you get to buy 2 more minions. However, in option 2, you're buying tier 3 minions rather than tier 2. So the first scenario where you sold and double bought on turn 3, you would now have 4 tier 2 minions. In the second scenario, you would then have 2 tier 3 minions. I generally kind of value that the minions in this like multiplicative effect. So 4 tier 2 minions, we'll call this a value of 8. 2 tier 3 minions is a value of 6. You're still behind on that one turn. However, you brought back like 6 tempo compared to you like gained 6 tempo of value over the first player. Additionally, going forward, the other first scenario you still have to tavern tier up. So that early tavern tiering is going to give you payoff in future turns. You're essentially saying I'm going to sacrifice current position for later value. The idea behind this in tempo is kind of just this concept of how aggressively are you leveling with respect to where the rest of the lobby is. It also might be how picky are you being with the units you buy. This kind of leads to questions of like, say you have the opportunity to do a triple, you might aggressively level, which is falling behind in tempo, because you think a higher tavern tier minion is going to give you some type of comeback effect because of generating value or whatever in itself. So let's kind of just look at how this is applied to the current meta. So let's first just kind of do a rundown of what I think the current meta looks like. In my opinion, there's 3 S tier comps. These would be elementals, mechs, and then like the AoE spell buffs. Let's call those S tier. A tier, I think, would be Demons, Overflow Beast, which is specifically like the undead version of Beetles, and then Quilboars. And those three would be an A tier. And then finally, Nagas and Beetles, I think, are B tier. And when I'm saying Beetles here, I'm saying this more of just a straight up beast variation with less of the undead overflow influence. In my opinion, outside of this, pretty much everything is unplayable. Obviously, you might have a couple Murloc and Undead Pirate top fours kind of thing, but it doesn't seem like anything's being consistently played well. So now we need to look at, well, what do all of these comps rely on? And really, they're relying on multi-turn scaling. If we kind of break this down, elementals, you need Lightspawn Drakari. Mechs, you need Hollow Rover, Electron, Spell Generation. For these, like, Lightspawn requires turns. Mechs require turns of generating magnetics and generating spells. For the spell buff comp, you need turns of Fellfire and Drakari. Demons, I think, are maybe the one oddball out that has this, like, brand comeback, because there's a lot of demon generation within the comp and a lot of value in general. But then let's look at continuing. Overflow Beast requires multiple turns of the Catacomb Crasher. Quilboars require multiple turns of gen buffing. Naga require you to have essentially been playing spells the entire game. And then similarly, Beetles Beast requires, multiple turns of Beetles scaling. So that, like, every comp really requires this, like, multiple turns of scaling to have happened. Additionally, you might recognize that all these comps have key minions that start scaling the comp on 5 and 6, with the exception of Quilboars. Quilboars are the one that have their gem buffing on 4, unless you're doing Poke Witches on 5. So how can we use this to improve our position? Generally, it's relatively simple, but when your lobby is tripling and you're trying to find a key 5 or 6 drop for your scaling, if you miss, you should make the assumption that someone else in the lobby has hit. If you roll 10 gold for a Drakari and don't find it, you should make the assumption that someone else has the Fellfire Drakari combo and they're ahead of you, and you're not going to be able to beat them because there aren't those key comeback units for you to essentially get value back over the tempo that you have lost. What this also kind of means is even if you aggressively level for looking for like a 6 drop and you miss, you should also assume that someone stayed down and hit their comp. What that then means is after you miss, and that could mean, rolling for a turn, it could mean missing a key 6 drop when you wasted all your gold, whatever. At that point, it's time for you to start roaching. In general, what I think the meta is you tavern up to tier 4, however you do that with your hero, you fill up your board, you stabilize, you go to tavern tier 5, and from there it's either you roll or you get a triple, and that determines. If you hit your win condition, you play to win. If you don't, you just try to roach for a top 4. You might naturally roll into whatever scaling you're thinking of, and that might become your new best board, but your mentality should change when you spend 10 gold and do a whiff. If you spent 10 gold, you need to make the assumption that someone else was able to do it without all the work that you just did, right? They're going to be ahead of you, and because there's no comeback mechanics, because there's really no way to outscale someone that started scaling before you, you need to make the assumption that they're just going to be able to beat you, and you need to roach and get the best top 4 kind of position that you can. So, anyways, sorry that, spent a lot of time on definitions and stuff, but this is just what I've been doing, and I found the most effective way for climbing right now. It does mean that there's just some games that are unwinnable, but that's always been true within Battlegrounds. So, hopefully this helps you. Hopefully you guys find the concept interesting. Good luck on your guys' climb. Hope to see you on the leaderboards as well. See ya. Bye.